like people are starting to come in for our next episode of Election Countdown Conversations. It's an online civics mini-series, and we're located in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And it usually takes a couple minutes for people to join. And so before we jump in, we're going to start with a little background about who we are for people who are joining us for the first time.
Yeah, okay. So we are the Society of Heart's Delights, 愚园社 in Chinese. 愚园社 is a growing community of Chinese immigrants who moved to America as adults. So that could be a few years, or it could be more than 20 or 30 years living in America. Our focus is on creating unique opportunities for Chinese professionals in diverse fields to engage with local life and culture, contribute to the public good using our own voice, and feel a sense of belonging while having fun. My name is Michelle. I'm the founder of 愚园社, and I will be one of your hosts today.
And my name is Pat, and I'll also be one of your hosts today. I'm originally from San Jose, California, but I lived in Chengdu, China for close to 7 years, so I do speak Mandarin Chinese. And I was working for the University of Washington there for most of that time. And a big part of my job was to help Americans adjust to life and research in China. So, this is also something very close to my heart, and I still consider Chengdu to be my second home to this day.
We believe that learning about politics at every level, having sincere conversations, and listening with an open heart is a good thing for everyone in our society. Our focus is on getting to know our political leaders, understanding more about the different roles in government, what politicians actually do, and how they make decisions. Keep in mind that we are not a political organization, and each individual has the right to vote for their candidates of choice.
Great, so now that that's out of the way, just a couple housekeeping items. Feel free to send your questions and comments directly to us, the panelists. And we also have someone from Evan, Assemblymember Lowe's office here to assist with sending information during the event if needed, and a couple of our team members from Yu Yuan She as well. You can also find our previous programming on YouTube at the Society of Heart's Delight channel, and you can find us at yuyuanshe.com as well. So, all right.
So now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, we are so honored to have welcome California State Assemblymember Evan Lowe. Assemblymember Lowe has a very interesting story, and he has accomplished a great deal during his nearly 15 years in public office. First of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Well, it's so wonderful to see you both, and I call you the dynamic duo. Truly, the work that you're doing warms my heart, especially when we talk about government and politics as a dirty word, but this is about our people, and this is about our democracy. So I'm happy to join you and have fruitful conversations.
Yeah, and actually that brings me right into my first question, because part of what we're working on doing here, we're just so honored to have you, and you've, like Michelle said, you have such an impressive story and so much that you've accomplished. But at the end of the day, you're also a human being, and these are incredible times that we're living in. So first of all, how are you doing during all of this?
You both are so sweet. I must admit that I do get a deep sense of enjoyment in having these conversations, especially during a COVID pandemic in which we are all isolated and or not able to engage in the normal human interaction that we would see. I know probably we would have seen both of you a number of times by now in which we feel isolated. And to that point, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is such that at least as someone who is Chinese, but also in government and the politician, I am to put my best face forward. But the reality is that I am absolutely human, just like everyone else, and that I am impacted when I see the news or have a sense of whether or not we can find any type of humanity given the different impeding challenges that we're faced with each and every day. So I just hope that we continually think about what we can do to stay connected with each other, but also make sure that we're demonstrating the best of our capacity and showing as much empathy and compassion for one another. That's something that I hope that we can continue to do.
Yeah, you know, and this is actually something that I've been thinking a lot about, is what is it that causes some people to take that extra step to get engaged, to go into public service, to give back to community, to volunteer, to be civically engaged. And actually, I want to take you back to before college years, a little bit earlier, because we actually both went to the same high school, Leland High School in San Jose. Woo!
Yes, Pat,
So,
yes.
Exactly. It was such a diverse student body, right? And a very competitive environment academically. A lot of people going to top schools. But there was also a lot of volunteer opportunities. There was a lot of, I remember I was a sophomore year secretary at Leland High School. So there was a lot of other activities too, besides academia. And looking back, I wonder, because I'm really interested, what is it that sparks something in people to go into public service? Before college, can you point to anything in your early years looking back? I mean, obviously at that time you had no idea, right, that you would someday be, assembly member low. But was there anything that sort of activated or planted a seed in you looking back?
Growing up, I was supposed to become a doctor like my father, like a good Chinese boy. He is an optometrist, an eye doctor. My uncle's an orthodontist. And so instilled in me, I was supposed to become a doctor, lawyer, or an engineer, or maybe an accountant. But yet I found out that I was very interested in that of being involved in my community. So that's why public service, community service was something that was a requirement upon graduation, but I just continued to do it and was active in the local Key Club, which is the current version, adult version of Kiwanis, and continued on that trajectory in which every weekend, instead of doing piano lessons or tennis lessons, I would be helping collect food for those that were in need, or helping volunteer at various festivals that might help raise money for any of the type of community service programs that we had in our communities. So it was just that public service was something that I just naturally grew up with. In fact, it was that with my father, who also volunteered. I mentioned and referenced him that he was a doctor, but he also believed in giving back. And so he was president of the Campbell Chamber of Commerce, president of the Lions Club, service organizations. So my weekends were filled with joining him at helping volunteer at these various functions. And so for me, that was just my childhood. And I'd reference that back to where I am today.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
So you've been very successful in your career. In 2016, New York Magazine identified you as a potential United States presidential candidate in 2024. And you've definitely stood out with what you've been able to accomplish. That's why when I heard about your story, I was so inspired. My own path has also been unconventional. This is something that isn't talked about openly in many Asian cultures. Since I didn't do well on my college entrance exam, it was only after completing a self-study bachelor program that I was able to get into a competitive master's program. I used to be ashamed of it. If I had given up, I never would have become an attorney, dare to start a law firm, and do many of the things I do today, including having this conversation with you. I'm very interested in how different people find their own unique ways to succeed. Can you share about your path to success and what you've learned about going for it as you look back?
Well, first of all, Michelle, I join you. And again, I think it's so wonderful that we're able to tell our story, and especially in this day and age, tell it with a sense of pride, in which I would suggest that just but a few decades ago, it'd be a much different story. And again, the Chinese culture, we like to only talk about successful things and putting the best face forward. And we don't talk about some of the other things that might be deemed as a negative quality or that of failure. We only talk about success. But that's important, especially in American society today. And coming and speaking to you from the heart of Silicon Valley, in which we celebrate failures, because it's what we learn from these failures, and adversity building character, which is so critically important. And I think it's important also to have a conversation about how we define success. Is success defined as simply that entrance that you referenced and getting into UC Berkeley or to Stanford, or looking at someone like a Mark Zuckerberg or a Bill Gates, individuals who dropped out of college to become these multi-billionaires and founding amazing companies? These are the things I think are important for us to have honest conversations about the definition of success and how we can be active members of our society, active citizens, and how we are identifying our roles in society. So I think that's what's very important for us to think about, the narrative to change that the definition of success is not just simply making an exorbitant amount of money. It's not just simply getting into a good college, but rather there are other associated benefits to which you turn on the TV every single day. And we recognize the importance of value and what this really means. And hopefully allowing this pandemic to provide us an opportunity to pause, to say, maybe these things weren't that important. That family is very important, and that our time is important, and our human connection is important. And so we need to reframe it and how we think about that. But again, it goes back to even this conversation that we're having, that the both of you value an opportunity to highlight individuals in respective areas in the fabric of our society and having dialogue and reframing how we think about things. Because I think it is very important, especially in this ever fast-paced and changing environment.
Yeah, I think all of us are rethinking what's important. I know I had like a dream the other night about hugging my friends. I just can't wait to be able to hug my friends again. So, well, we're about to jump into some real hard-hitting questions, nothing too crazy, but some hard-hitting questions. So before we do that, just a quick rapid-fire question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how spicy do you like your food?
I am more of a mild person, so yeah, probably like a 1, lower, because I sweat too much.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting, all the range of answers we'll be getting on this one. So
yeah, we have space working on him.
Yeah, we can work on you. We can work on.
We're gonna have to go out. That's like my commitment to you, that we're gonna go out and have some good spicy food.
Excellent.
Sure.
We're gonna test. We're gonna test it and push it up to 2 or 3 there. So. So now we're going to get into the role in the state government and decision making.
Mm-hmm. So in the year of 2017, you were named the most prolific legislator in California with the most bills signed. First of all, that's really incredible. How do you decide which laws to sponsor? Can you walk our audience through the different steps and how you work to move legislation forward from idea to vote to law?
Yeah, absolutely. Fundamentally, the job that I have as a California State Assemblymember is to pass laws in the entire state of California. There are 120 legislators in the entire state of California, and in the lower house, in the assembly, I represent and work for approximately 500,000 people, so 500,000 people. And they send me to Sacramento each and every week to work on bills, on the policies to have an impact on everyday lives of everyday Californians. And by the way, a factoid, if California was its own country, we'd be the 5th largest economy in the world, which just goes to show the economic engine that we are in the state of California, which by the way, also goes to show the tapestry of talent that we have, given the diversity in the state of California. So having said that, my job is to pass and introduce legislation, some of it successful, some of it not, and working with the governor to sign the legislation, as we are the legislative branch. Part of that is that I take a look at what I am passionate about, to me personally, and to what I see in my respective communities. That's why I focus quite a bit on the social safety net, to which you'll see me championing and carrying a number of different issues with respect to education, issues to healthcare, and issues of housing. These are the basic fundamentals that we do. Equally known, I'm also very passionate about the LGBTQ community and ensuring that we have the type of protections in the state of California, especially when there is significant harm still in this day and age in the state of California to these communities. But anyone can pass a bill to us to suggest, Assemblymember Lowe, perhaps you might like to carry this piece of legislation and champion it for us, and here's a reason why. We also have a tradition in which we do a holiday party, and we have a Christmas tree in our office to which individuals, any member of the public, can write their bill idea and put it on the tree on a shape of an ornament. And we assess that and we look at all the various bill ideas that we have, and many of them have been introduced and actually signed into law. So again, I am just a vehicle. Any member of the public can help champion any type of issue that they care about.
Wow,
It's just
wonderful.
impressive that you have passed so many. So looking at sort of the difference between an assembly member and a California state senator, we just had a state senator candidate, Ann Ravel, on recently, and along with Betty E. So we were talking about the economy and how big the economy is in the state of California. Can you sort of identify the difference between these roles? And also, how do, and maybe as a follow-up, how does assembly member overlap or intertwine with other roles like the governor or even the federal level? Like, can you give some examples of where they might overlap or intertwine?
Sure. It's very similar. So this is back to basics. I can talk to you both about this all day, all night, as I previously taught American government at De Anza College, 7:30 a.m. Monday through Thursday. So I can talk about the Constitution, about back to basics. So similarly, at the federal level, that is that of Congress, which is the lower house, and that of the United States Senate and the upper house. And there are 2 United States senators and a number of congressional members proportional to the populations of each state. So we mirror that in the California state of California. So each assembly member, we represent 500,000 people, and each state senator represents about 1 million. And that's why it's the proportion about 40 state senators and 80 state assembly members. And so the process is that we are part of the legislative branch. And there are 3 branches of government: the governor, the administration, the executive branch, and that of the judicial branch, which are our judges, and then the legislative branch. And that's where the assembly members and senators are. So in the legislative branch, the assembly and the Senate pass laws. And if they get the number of votes required, then it goes to the governor's desk, either for signature to make that law and or to veto it, to say, no, he doesn't believe in that. So these are the type of mechanisms to which a law becomes law in the state of California.
So you probably get to know all of the different sort of people that you need to have good relationships with in order to get stuff done, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And Pat, Michelle, let me just say that it is such that I talk to the other 119 legislators and developing personal relationships with them. And sometimes we may be on complete opposite sides of the political spectrum. But what I hope that we try to embody is that of partnership over partisanship, which is to say that we all are putting ourselves up for election to attempt to serve, answer the call to public service, and let's battle these ideas. Let's not battle each other, but let's be critical in a democracy about these ideas. This is that of the legislative branch, and it is such that we should be critiquing each other and providing input on these various proposals, but let's not demonize each other, and let's help to embody that of the best of our abilities of public service.
I agree. I could not agree more.
Yeah, we have to work with each other to get things done.
Yes, for sure.
It is very true. And let me, again, I say this frequently, that my mother and I love each other deeply. I am her son, and we break bread and we have family dinners, but we can disagree on a number of things, which is true. She and I do not see eye to eye on many things, and we will go at it. But at the end of the day, we still love each other, we still hug, and we still break bread. That should be the same type of narrative that we see with our neighbors, with our friends, and with our expected elected representatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sort of the next topic about technology, it again has that potential to connect or to divide, right? So I think you had a question about that.
So you are the co-founder of the California Technology and Innovation Caucus. What can you do to help to make sure that Silicon Valley remains the global leader in technology and also doesn't leave people behind with digital divide? How can we balance staying cutting edge without cutting people off from these technologies?
Yes, I think it's just very important for us to try to catch up. Government, we are so slow. And here in Silicon Valley, when you think about startups and disruptive natures, by default of disruption, these companies are looking to reframe and do something completely different from the norm. So government is often slow to catch up on the regulatory and making sure that this is in the best interest of the public, the consumer protection. And so when we think about the largest libraries are no longer the brick and mortar when you go to a traditional library where you see books, but it's that of Amazon, the largest library. Or you think about the largest real estate companies, it's not necessarily that of what you might see traditionally, but that of an Airbnb in which you have access online. Or you think about the largest access to ride sharing or cars and vehicles of transportation companies. It's not going to be your Hertz, but rather that of your Uber and Lyfts of the world. So we need to reframe and think about these technologies and the utilization while also making sure that you have the basic fundamental consumer protections in place. And that's very difficult. So when you think about the future of work and the displacement of jobs, how do you ensure that we can utilize that technology while also supporting everyday people? And that's the biggest challenge that I see. In other words, how do we rewrite the rules of the economy to work for each and every one of us, and ensuring that when we know about job displacements, how we can retrain and retool the skill sets for everyday workers so that we can make sure that they are placed in other areas as well.
I feel like this could be a whole hour-long conversation alone. I mean, this is such a huge topic, and you know, government hasn't always been known as being the most innovative, and I think that's something that you brought in the work that you've done, is to sort of question the way. I heard that even on city council or as a mayor of Campbell, that you were introduced video streaming to you know, as the young guy, right? Like, you brought in new technologies. So hopefully government can start to catch up with some of that.
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right, Pat, but that was seen as a sort of a crazy idea back then, like how, the concept that you could do things from the comfort of your own home. Don't we want people to show up at the chambers and be in person? Whereas you fast forward, it's looking at different things in a different way. And that's something that I hope to attempt to do continually in the state of California, which is this. When you think about the IRS or the DMV or just government in general and having to fill out a form or to pay your taxes or to interact, it becomes, you feel the sense of stress, your stomach hurdles, and you think you get very tense. But imagine if we had a one-stop shop that is secure, to which we can interface with government. And of course, it's difficult for us to make the distinction between the state and the federal governments. But the state knows quite a bit about us. So even on something as simple as student and financial aid, we put the onus on the student right now, to which the student has to fill out a number of forms to see what they're qualified for. Whereas because of tax returns and the IRS, we already know this information about everyday people. So why wouldn't we, the state and or the federal government, proactively send out information to eligible individuals who might be students and say, we know what you are eligible for because you've returned your tax, we see your tax return. By the way, here's what you're eligible for. Being proactive, government being in the driver's seat to help everyday people versus putting the burden and onus on everyday people in government. Why wouldn't we do that? This is a customer service. This is a consumer. We work for you. So why wouldn't we not enhance our ability to work for everyday people? And that's something I'm deeply passionate about. It's something that, being born and raised here in Silicon Valley, I am privy to, but something that I think we should be doing better in.
Yeah, barriers to entry is a huge, huge topic again. So, well, and you know, in the meantime, we have this pandemic, right? So everything has pretty much changed since, and it's a super big topic. And obviously we're limited on time. But can you highlight some key things that have changed since this pandemic hit? And especially in terms of making decisions and how things operate. And then I know we had a huge surplus in our budget that's been wiped out. Anything that you care to add about the budget would be great.
Yes, a couple of things. We as the state of California are constitutionally required to balance a budget. And we cannot be like the federal administration in which they print money overnight. You know, during this COVID pandemic, the federal administration passed a stimulus plan in which everyday people, every American got a certain amount of resources depending on the type of income that you had. but that money was just printed like that, just overnight. Whereas in the state of California, we cannot just print our money. And you referenced earlier, we have a $52 billion deficit. Now, Pat and Michelle, think about this. Beginning January 2020, just in the beginning of the year, in the new year, we started off in the state of California with close to $20 billion in surplus. $20 billion in surplus. And just but a few months later, 52 billion in a deficit. And that goes to show that it is difficult in public budgeting to save these resources and these reserves over a period of time. But because of the COVID pandemic and the shutdown, we now have less in terms of sales and income tax because people are not working and businesses are shut down. And also now we have 5+ million people, over 5 million Californians utilizing unemployment insurance, in which we didn't have that before because people are not working. 5 million Californians. Think about that. Before we had a surplus, 20 billion surplus, and not 5 million people utilizing unemployment. And now all of a sudden 5 million within a short period of time, utilizing, accessing, drawing upon resources that the state didn't have. And that's where we lead to our budget today, which is why we are pleading with our federal government to help us on the everyday things that we need just to keep everyday Californians working. And then transitioning to your other part of the question of the COVID pandemic, this is just on helping everyday people in California survive and put food on the table. But also think about the wildfires and the incredible cost that the wildfires and the damage that has been caused and the impact to the state resources. This is why we need the partnership of the federal administration to help us where possible. So these are the struggles and the challenges that we face in making sure that we identify the real needs of everyday people. But just on this question, let me close by saying this. It is imperative, think about this, to which you have a shelter in place and you have vulnerable populations, but you have terrible air quality, close to 100-degree temperatures here in Silicon Valley, distance learning, and some of the homes in our regions had their power shut off because of the PSPs and PG&E having to force people to have the power off. This is a devastation. We expect better. We are not a third world country. We should be expecting more. And that's why I'm so passionate about working hard to ensure that we can do better for everyday people. This is an embarrassment, and the accountability stops with people like me. And that's why I'm working very hard to ensure that we can educate the public and do better. These are the times in which people need us. This is the safety net, and we are failing people. So I take this job very seriously, but I hope that message is translated to the people who are watching, that you must be involved in government, that this is politics, but this is also our democracy, and we must not abdicate or ignore our responsibility to hold our government accountable.
Absolutely. And, you know, especially with all of these things happening at the same time, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. There's just so many topics we could cover in this short hour. So, you know, you can pan way out and look at the number of unemployed and the number of people displaced from their homes and the Black Lives Matter protests and all of these things that are just layers and layers of things happening at the same time. And at the same time, you don't want to get lost about the things that matter too, that where you would zoom in, the more personal things where the personal meets the political. And so that also matters, right? So you had a question that's more personal.
Now my next question is about our LGBT community. So as a lesbian myself, I know personally how important it has been to be honest with myself and others. And I believe representation makes a big difference. You didn't just make history by coming out as the youngest openly LGBT mayor in the country at the age of 26. You have continued to care about issues impacting the LGBT community. You are the former chair, now the member of the California LGBT Legislative Caucus. For people watching who may not know, what does this caucus do and why is it so important?
Well, again, I want to just thank the two of you for being you, being authentic, because it provides an opportunity for a 10-year-old me back in the day to see wonderful people, loving individuals, role models in my own community. because I think about my obligation to our LGBTQ community. And I just always reference back to the feelings I had as a young boy, born and raised here in this community, feeling like there was something inherently wrong with me. We didn't have the internet back then. And so that's why I take this job very seriously with a personal lens to this. Your question was about the Lgbt Caucus in the California State Legislature. And it is essentially a group of openly LGBTQ legislators. And we come together, and there are approximately 8 of us, and we come together as a group, as sort of a club, so to speak, within the legislature, and we advocate and look at different pieces of legislation that we wish and desire to champion with respect to our community, ensuring that we have a voice in the state of California, and that we will stamp out discrimination of any kind. But it also goes to say that we need to stand in complete unconditional allyship of those other communities who are also facing similar pressures of discrimination, whether it be gender pay equity, that women make less on the dollar than men, or making sure that our LGBTQ community stands in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. These are all the things that we demonstrate in the state of California.
And the intersectionality, I mean, and just with Justice Ginsburg recently passing, it's even more important than ever that we're there for each other, that we care for one another. And I do, by the way, just speaking to our viewers, we have a nice active audience. I see questions coming in, so we're going to try to keep moving along. Actually, the next question was about the importance of voting and civic engagement. You're already kind of going into that. Can you expand on that? And what does it mean to be civically engaged? What is the meaning of that?
Yeah, again, not everyone needs to become a politician. I didn't want to do it. I sort of see myself as an introvert, as very shy. But I also wake up each and every day to which, when I see the current occupant in the White House saying the Chinese virus or the Kung flu, that this is terrible to the community. And I'm feeling like I'm a second-class citizen, or that by running outside, I could be faced with discrimination or hate crime just because of who I am. So this is very important for us to remember our own identity, and ensuring that when we talk about civic participation, we must play a role. There's more to being an active citizen than just simply voting, but be involved in your community, volunteer at a food bank, or sign up as joining and being active in your neighborhood association, or joining a political action committee and serving on the board of directors, or joining and holding your elected representatives accountable by asking them to join a Zoom and having dialogue about the things that are impacting our community. These are all things that we can be active in.
Yeah, we actually, our first event was with Chief Garcia of the San Jose Police Department and DA Rosen, and talking about safety and the concerns of being targeted for COVID-19. And I think, you know, just having people speak to you directly, having you here talking about the importance of that, because it can be easy to get lost in all of the awful rhetoric out there. In fact, one person is talking about the polarization and what can we do to counter that? Do you have any, let's see if I can.
So we already have many questions coming in.
People are appreciating your positive attitude and towards division within our community. And that, you know, this person saying that he knows that you were attacked a lot. And so like just talking about this division, what is the answer to this division? What should
I don't have all the answers, but I can just tell you from experience that it is incredibly important to lead with your heart, as much empathy and understanding. And I just take it upon myself to seek out. So I guess some actionable items. Seek out people who may not think or share the same values as you do, or that think similarly. So I will go out of my way to find someone who is more conservative, who might not be Chinese, who might think differently about the LGBT community. But breaking bread, sharing a meal with each other, again, because of this COVID pandemic and because of social media, it's almost as if we don't have to interact with people in real life. And that's, I think, very frustrating. In other words, it's easy to go online or social media or to Facebook and say something crass, to comment negatively. It's very easy. And yet, if you thought about doing that to someone in person, to their face, you might couch things a little differently. And so I think that dialogue is very important because we're losing that human interaction. So talk to people who may not think like you do, or who might share different values, so that there can be some commonality on understanding. At least you can appreciate and recognize where they are coming from, so that there is an open dialogue and understanding that they are not the devil, they are not the enemy, but rather we're all human and we just come from a different perspective.
And I feel like there's no shortcut to that. You have to do it. Like, you can read all the articles you want and watch all the documentaries you want, but there's nothing really that replaces talking, I feel like. I don't know if that's been your experience.
Yes, and just remember this: as a elected representatives, my job is to frankly argue, to debate, and to come up with different viewpoints, and to try to win people over who might not think like me. And that's what, again, I think that's very important, to recognize that whether or not you're Democrat, Republican, Green Party, whatever your party affiliation is, we all are trying to do the best that we can as citizens of the world. And so let us try to have dialogue with each other.
Yeah,
That's great.
at the end of the day, we are all human beings.
Yeah. It can be easy to lose sight of that.
So my next question is, you already talked a little bit about allyship. This question, the newer wave of Chinese immigrants can be pretty isolated from the broader society, and many of us feel like we don't have a voice. As a Chinese American political leader, what should we do to make sure our voices are also heard? I've heard a lot of politicians talk about allyship. What's allyship, and what is important for the Chinese immigrant community?
Yes, well, I think, again, allyship is having a sense of, number one, understanding. That's why when we think about the history of Chinese in America, it's very important to understand that we also face discrimination of 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act, a law that was passed to prevent us from being citizens in the United States, or the Alien Land Law of 1913, which prevented Asian Americans from owning property. And when you understand our own history, then you can see, wow, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to forbid migration from a geographic region to the United States. And that's what's happening today to the Muslim countries. We have a law in place that will go reference to the Muslim ban. So the question about allyship is, why should Chinese care about a ban of Muslims? Well, again, if you understand our history of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, this happened to us. And we knew how we felt about that that's not fair, that is an injustice. So we should recognize the support for the Muslim community similarly, or the allyship of understanding what it's like to be discriminated being Black in America. And that's this notion of Black Lives Matter. We know this as Chinese living in America, that you could be discriminated against or being accused of having the Kung flu or the Chinese virus, and that of the Black community, and that of similar allyship to which Blacks in America are pulled over disproportionately and being accused of being criminals. These are the type of discriminatory practices that we see, and the racism. So we stand in solidarity of allyship to say racism towards anyone is wrong. And that's why when we talk about the coalitions, it's important that we stand up for each other. And that's where you'll see this issue of affirmative action and other things that I know that people are also very interested in, and talking about the importance of allyship, that sometimes we must sacrifice of ourselves, frankly, to help others, because we know that they will do the same for us.
I know that some people are, curious about this topic, so I'm glad that you talked about that. That you're referencing to the Prop 16. So, and you were talking about taking time to try to explain. That's part of your job, is to help people to understand different points of view.
Right, and so within the specific roles of the Chinese community, individuals who are opposed to Prop 16 or affirmative action is such that there might be a fear of loss, that this should be a meritocracy, that we in American society should abide by the laws, and that it should be based on meritocracy, and that we are colorblind. But that's not the reality that we're dealing with. We're not dealing in a meritocracy because race does matter. We cannot have race neutral solutions to very race specific problems. And that's why when we think about statistics and data, that while the law might be equal on the books, women still make less than men on the dollar. And that's why we in the state of California have passed a law to require a certain percentage of women on corporate boards, because corporate America is not doing good enough. That's why we talk about a bill that was also passed that requires a certain percentage of minorities consisting on corporate boards in the C-suites and the board of directors of companies incorporated in the state of California, because we're not seeing it clearly enough. The private sector is already doing this, and so we want to make sure that we have parity in the public sector.
It's so important. And I know that we have so many questions coming in, but we do have a small surprise here for you. And I don't know if this person is ready. This is our first time trying something like this, but Kevin, are you there? All right, we have my friend here.
Okay,
Hi, Kevin.
I'm here.
Great. So I just want to introduce my friend Kevin. Kevin is a Taiwanese American designer and researcher with a passion for advancing civic conversations. And he's been active in the backdrop. You want to share what you've been up to, Kevin?
Sure. Let's see if it's this. Might not work with the. Hold on. Yeah, my picture is currently invisible because of my Zoom background.
Oh boy. Let's see if you put there.
Okay.
There. Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
I can see your room too.
Yeah, you can see my everything. Okay. There you go.
Did you just do that just now, Kevin?
Yeah, I've been drawing this.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that is
capturing our conversation. And
wow.
we're going to present that as a gift to you, Evan, as a memory of the conversations that we've been having, and share it also with our community. Thank you so much, Kevin. There's a lot to look at there. It's amazing.
That's amazing, Kevin. I'm so grateful. That's some artwork there. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you, Assemblymember.
All right.
That's
thanks,
incredible.
Kevin. We'll see you soon.
I don't even know this.
I know. Michelle didn't even know. It's a surprise. Okay.
You're full of surprises, Pat.
It's great. It's great. So we are getting close to the end here, and but Evan did graciously say that he has a little wiggle room. So which question?
Yeah, we can read these comments from our audience.
This one right here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we have a comment here from Ao Zhang to all of us. And they say they really appreciate about Evan's positive attitude towards the division within our community. This person says, I know he was attacked a lot after his support of Prop 16. We talked about that a bit. And those swore to elect you out. How did you feel about that? And how do you digest the negative backlash? This person says they are just a volunteer at Yes on Prop 16 and got cyberbullied at all social media. Can you share a little bit about how to fight consistently without anger and fear? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, because I taught American government, I very much embrace the sense of passionate democracy. We can expect that we're not going to agree. In fact, I think probably between the three of us, Pat and Michelle, even if I said something as simplistic as what is our favorite ice cream, the three of us might come up with something completely different, but that's okay. And it's okay to have difficult conversations about something, yes, as overly simplistic as that. So in a democracy, this is what is important, that we hear from all people. In fact, I welcome seeing more people engaging with our government to talking about why they have this perspective, because it allows us a conversation about the legislative intent as to what is Prop 16 attempting to accomplish and achieve. And those might be in opposition, might say, this is a terrible way, and there are unintended consequences. So the response from them should be, no, we don't believe in Prop 16, but here's what we believe in. We might believe in increasing funding to education to increase access. We might believe in talking about race relations, so let us put these structures in place. I think it's all part of democracy. Democracy, by the way, isn't, the reason why I think it's so negative is because you do argue, but if that is our democracy, if we preferred a different form of government in which we could not have open minds and free thinking, that leads to other problems. And I don't think we want that. So I very much welcome, it comes with the territory for everyone to have their own opinion. And I do not have the say on the truth. I can only just say what I believe and based on the information that I'm provided.
I'm sure that's a skill too that you have to grow over time, because it is kind of shocking, I think, when perhaps you haven't experienced that. So our next question from the audience says that a study shows that Asian Americans are the least likely racial group to be promoted into Silicon Valley's management and executive levels. What's your advice on this bamboo ceiling issue?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely true. We can get our feet in the door, but getting up there, there's that bamboo ceiling, which is why I referenced. Take a look at for yourself. This is Assembly Bill 979 that was recently passed in the legislature. It's on the governor's desk for signature, but it would require a certain percentage of minorities on corporate boards in the C-suites. So we want to see the Asian Pacific Islanders represented in the highest levels of the board of directors, not just as entry-level engineers, but we want to see them all the way at the top, from the vice president to the chief marketing officers, all across the board. And that's something that we hope to do, which again, back to the point, Michelle, about allyship. Yes, we want to see individuals of our community getting up in C-suites levels, but we also want to see more women, more African-American, more Latinos. We want to see more LGBTQ people in these positions. That's what's important.
And it does make a difference when you see yourself represented. You were talking about going back to high school. I came out in high school and there was no role model. There was no one for me to point to see what success could look like for somebody like me. And I think for people maybe perhaps who haven't experienced that, they don't understand the power of that. So I think it's really wonderful to emphasize all of the connections between all of us. And I personally love how diverse California is. It's one of my favorite things about living here. So wonderful. Well, we do have one more question here. Did you have a?
Yeah, we can pick.
Okay, so somebody's asking a question about your legislative style. How would you describe your legislative style?
I attempt to seek out individuals, as I referenced earlier, who might not think like me. So when I think about a proposal that I introduced, largely in part of the normalization of universal basic income from Andrew Yang, I've introduced that in the state of California, which was previously seen as a wacky idea, a crazy idea, when in fact we've seen similar iterations of basic income in the recent stimulus as a result of the COVID pandemic, that every Californian receives some type of basic income as a result of staying as stable as possible. But I will seek out other colleagues to begin with, those Republican colleagues or those that might be more conservative, to talk about, here is a legislative proposal and here's why, and help me understand where you might be coming from. My legislative intent is to try to help everyday people, that we should have basic income to survive in everyday society. And another colleague might think differently. And so I want to best understand that. So perhaps I can change, modify, and to get that viewpoint accommodated and addressed. It's important to have dialogue, again, with people that might think different from us.
And that also speaks to someone else's question about how to balance, your own, the different groups that you belong to, and also other groups. And so I think that really speaks to that specifically.
Yes, unfortunately, I think the social media world rewards that of hyper-polarization, hyper-partisanship, that it gets people going because it's the red meat. And unfortunately, the governance, collaboration, compromise is now seen as a dirty word. It's seen as do not compromise, when in fact we realize that I, as an elected representative, work for all Californians, not just those who voted for me, or not just those that are Democrat, or not just those that are Chinese American, but I represent all people. And so whether or not you vote for me or not, I still will answer the obligation to work for each and every one of you.
That's great. And I do think that it is a test to our democracy right now that we're experiencing. And do you have any closing thoughts about the state of our democracy and maybe leave us with a little hope, perhaps?
Well, again, in closing, I am so grateful. I was sincere when I said to you both that you warmed my heart, because this is the type of engagement that I hope to see, that hopefully you can see that politicians or our elected representatives come from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And you do not need to be a stereotypical type of individual, but that we all must play our part in our democracy of being an active citizen. So think about each and every day to which and how you can play a role in helping our society, that I am invested in your success and that you are invested in my success. And what are we doing each and every day to help each other thrive as much as possible? And that's the hope and the inspiration that I want to see, not only in our society, but think about the positive outcomes that we are much more intertwined and connected than we are different.
And cynicism gets you nowhere, right? Cynicism does nothing. And we can't sink into cynicism. We have to have hope.
Well, it is easy to be cynical, and it is easy to criticize, and is it easy to disagree, and it's easy to say no. But the real challenge is to say, well, how do we get to yes? Or maybe not quite there, but here's what I think, or here's my solution, or I understand where you're coming from, but have you thought about this?
Right.
These are the important conversations to have.
Well, it's great. We're so lucky to have you join us today. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I know it means a lot to our viewers. And as someone in the audience is asking how to reach out to you, I think that from your team here, Juliana.
Yes, Juliana. Yes, I'll ask Juliana to again provide our social media handle on Twitter and also our Facebook page. If you have any questions or comments, feel free. If you have some ideas on what we should or should not be doing, please feel free. Remember, I work for each and every one of you.
That's great. And thank you so much again. So we'll have a rebroadcast of this on our YouTube channel, and our next election countdown conversation will be with our personal, in our district, City Council member Dev Davis and the mayor of San Jose, Sam Liccardo. So we're going to look at the city level of governance. So thank you again, Evan, and hope that you'll join us again in the future, and really looking forward to being able to see you in person again.
Yes, sooner than later, I hope.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Stay safe.